Okay, we'll kick straight off. System 2000 automatic lock arm. This is an awning that was developed by Hunter Douglas in Australia for our conditions and our climate. It was designed back in 1992 and won quite a prestigious Australian Design Award at that point. Certainly was manufactured, designed with materials of high quality in mind. And it is a very strong, a very robust product that when you look at automatic awnings in the market, still very much seen as the benchmark as far as quality in the industry. Now, you can use a variety of fabrics on this awning. You can order it with our external sunscreen fabric, your Everscreen Plus, our range of canvas, and obviously the Dixon range of acrylic fabrics. We don't offer this awning in clear PVC, just external screen, canvas, and acrylic fabric. And those fabrics are what's been tested, obviously, with the awning in mind by the CSIRO and deemed to obviously meet the Australian standards. Now, there are two styles of System 2000 in the range. We have the lock arm awning, which we're going to install and talk about today, and we have the System 2000 pivot arm. They use the same mounting bracket and the same head box. From that point, the componentry tends to differ a little bit, but they are similar style awnings. And whilst the pivot arm is ideal for first floor and above, the automatic awning obviously is ideal for ground floor applications and is a manually operated awning. So we're going to look at that System 2000 lock arm awning today. Now, we refer to it as an automatic lock arm, but it is a manually operated awning. Now, the fact that we refer to it as automatic, it just means that the arm locks automatically the moment you release the arm, but you use it manually. Suitable for ground floor, as I said, not suitable for any level above that. You could probably get away with half a floor above ground level, but not a full floor above. Measuring. Most of our awnings are pretty straightforward to measure, and particularly when you're mounting them on face. And if you look at what I've got behind me here, we've got our product installation house here. We've got a mock-up area here. It's a timber frame, but we've mocked it up to look like brick. So we're going to mount our System 2000 automatic lock arm on here. We're going to measure the window, basically the inside area here. And our recommendation is to add a minimum of 300 millimeters so we get good coverage past the glass. These are awnings that come down on a slight angle, depending on the arm projection that you've specified. Lots of people in the industry probably don't come past the 300 that we do. And obviously coming past 300, the awning's bigger. It adds a little bit more cost to it. But you get a product that does a better job as far as protecting the window and keeping the sun out. So reveal, add 300. Where the drop's concerned, our recommendation is you add 150 millimeters because ideally we want to mount the head box above so that when you're inside looking out, you're not seeing the back of that head box and the roller tube. In this scenario here, we don't have the luxury of doing that, so we are mounting it a little bit lower. Now, if you're obviously measuring to fit on architrave, again, our recommendation would be you would measure from outside edge to outside edge of architrave, and that would be the measurement you give us. And again, for the drop, you do top to bottom. You can go wider than that if need be, but product looks better when it's, I guess, made to suit the size of the architrave that's there. Now, you can also put a System 2000 lock arm in the reveal in here if you want to. The bracketry is the same, but we just include some angle brackets so you can still face fit all of the bracketry that holds the awning together. So if you're measuring and fitting in reveal, you need to take 10 millimeters off your measurement that you give us. That allows the spacing for the angle brackets to fit either side. Headbox colours, we're going to put up one shortly which has a black headbox. We've got quite a few colours. We've got white, Federation green, mist green, primrose, stony beige, brown, black, galaxy, anvil and red oxide. They predominantly match well with the colours of the canvases and the acrylics and the screens that we have. These awnings have glass reinforced plastic end caps. They're very stylish, they're very strong. They don't lend themselves to being powder coated. So it's not a head box that's easily powder coated, and we'd certainly recommend you stick with the standard colours. When it comes to installing this awning, obviously in its simplest form, if you're installing onto the architrave of the home, you are going to install the brackets, and I'll say the brackets. The first bracket you install is the bracket that holds the head box. So you're going to install that top, flush at the top and at the outside edge. And you're going to pre-drill a hole through that architrave, probably a 3mm drill. You really want to do that to make sure that the screws, when you put them through, do not split that timber architrave. Then you want to fix using 50mm by 10 gauge screws. 50mm because you don't just want to screw it to the architrave, you want to get through to the stud behind the architrave to make that a solid fixing. Trevor, you don't need to come in. No. Likes to come in whenever I use the word stud.
So I'll go back to work.
Yep, good idea. If you're installing to brickwork or render, just be conscious that obviously you don't want to be drilling too close to the edge of a brick because you can chip away or break a brick. So our recommendation is 50mm in from the edge of the brick is where you want to mount your bracket. Now, if you have an eave or a soffit, as some people call it, you do need to allow 25mm clearance from the underside of that eave to the top edge of the bracket. Because when we put this awning head box up shortly, you'll see the awning lifts over that bracket. So if you've got that bracket all the way on the eave, you will not be able to put the head box on. The other important thing to keep in mind is that when you are fitting brackets into brickwork, avoid the mortar. The mortar is not the strength. The strength is in the brick. You want some fixings in the solid part of the brick. When you are fixing to brickwork or render, you want to use a 40mm by 6mm roll plug or something equivalent, and then a 40mm by 10 gauge self-tapping screws. Now, sometimes on brickwork, you may want to fit what's known as brick fix bracket. Now, a brick fix bracket is a bracket that sits behind the standard headbox bracket, but it spreads the load out over another course of brick. So you can see that's the standard installation bracket. That's the brick fix bracket. So that fits on there like that. And you can see we've got about another 100mm of extended bracket, which attaches to the brick below, and it just spreads the load out over another course of bricks. So if you're concerned that the mortar's a bit soft, the bricks are a bit suspect to movement, or it's a high wind area, you can call up that brick fix bracket. They don't come standard, you do need to ask for them on your order. Another thing you can do if it is a high wind area, you can have more brackets. You can put bracket right next to another bracket just to give more secure fixing to hold that head box in place. Any questions, comments, guys, please feel free to flick them through and we'll answer them as we go. So what I'm going to do now is I have partially fitted some of the brackets and some items on here, but I am now going to just put the other head box mounting bracket up, and then we'll put the head box in place. Now I obviously am using fixings here that you won't use in a real life application because we've got our installation house here built with inserts, and we're using basically little set screws to secure. But the concept of how the awning goes together obviously is the same. Okay. So what I've got over there, and I'll grab the head box in a minute, obviously when we've got the awning is actually in the head box. Now, you will find in this product that obviously the awning is in the head box, and the spring tension that's been set in the factory on this automatic awning needs to be locked off before you can remove it from the head box. So otherwise you'll lift it out, the spring will uncoil. It'll still be contained in the roller tube, but you'll need to retension it. So what you need to do is lock off the little pawl at the bottom, and I might just show you that briefly because I've got it here. So this little silver leg here, which locks into the housing, you need to make sure that's engaged before you lift that out of the head box. When we put this in the awning, I'll talk to you about the positioning of that and what you need to do. So I'll come back over now with my my head box, black head box. At the back of this head box there, if I tilt it hopefully the right angle, this is the back here, and there is a lip there. And that lip is what's going to hook over the top of my bracket. So I just come along with the head box, angle it back a little bit, drop it down. Really going to find its spot really easily. They're not a heavy head box to pop up. It's just sitting there. It needs to be secured into place. But before we do that, we're just going to tap it along to center it. And when we're happy with the centering of that, we're going to put another little screw through. This is our installation bracket for the head box, and we'll have a screw come through the bottom. Now, these are supplied with the awning. You'll get little gold self-drilling screws, and you need to put one through each. Actually going to use a slightly different screw here because we've used this over and over and over and over and over again. So I'm using a little nut and a bolt. And of course they should line up perfectly because we've done it several times. But there we go. If you don't do that, there's every possibility that awning head box can come off that bracket. So you have to fit these. So that's just secure there. So that now can't come off the bracket. That is quite important. Now, when it comes to mounting the guide rods, obviously the guide rods, and I've got one pre-installed here. This is what the arms slide up and down on. Those guide rods need to be positioned within 600 millimeters of the end. So within 600 millimeters of the end. There's a little bit of a rule with that, but which I'll come back to shortly. Now, to mark the point where I want to mount that guide rod is really, really simple. And what you want to do, you grab your arm. Arms come in different lengths, different projections. 150, 300, 450. The 150s and 300s are the most common. We would do 600s and 900s, although very, very rarely. But to find that point where I want to mount the top of my guide rod, all I need to do is get my arm, hold that awning, hold that up onto there. So I've got my arm on my guide rod. I'm coming along, just sitting the grey C section up under the head box. And that's the point where I want to mount my guide rod. So I would mark that, drill it, plug it if it was masonry, or if it was timber again, drill that 3mm hole and then put your screw through the architrave. So that's how I get the point that I want. To hold that at the bottom, we have a little L bracket. Now, so the guide rod's fixed at the top, fixed at the bottom. Now the guide rod, I've seen awnings fitted where the guide rod is, where the actual L bracket, almost L bracket, is fitted that way. Meant to be fitted that way. Two reasons. One, it looks better, but the main reason is if you fit it that way, water will seep behind and prematurely corrode the screws that you've used to fit it. Designed to go that way. I'm going to quickly fit that. Okay. So then I've got my guide rod here. I've got my arm on it. Just be careful, make sure you put the arm on the right way. Obviously, if you put it on the wrong way, it's not going to do the right thing. So just a bit of trial and error. Just make sure you put it on the right way so that it'll lock in the up position. Come along with my guide rod, pop it in there. Can let go of that arm now. And I'm just going to put my fixings that I worked out before. 2 fixings. And I'll just nip that up. Done. On the bottom of the guide rod, you get supplied little black rubber dress caps. Just pop that on the end there. Keep in mind, these guide rods probably won't be the length that you want them to be because we stock them in standard lengths. So most cases will be cutting them to suit. Now, I spoke about the positioning of the guide rod. Can be up to 600 millimetres in from the end. Well, it can only be 600 in, providing I've got another 1800 before I get to the next guide rod with a 600 overhang. So we have a rule and a ratio of 1:3:1. So certainly on this awning, I can't bring it in 600 and bring the other one in 600. I'd have them here with a gap in the middle of about 400. You can't do that. So it's the 1:3:1 ratio. You can bring them in and get overhang up to 1/3 of the distance between the two guide rods. As I said, arm gets placed on the guide rod before it gets popped into the L-shaped bracket. Slide that on and we're all done. So the next thing we're going to do now is install the roller tube. Now, we over-roll. Reverse roll is the terminology we use for internal products, but when we talk awnings, we talk over-roll. So the fabric's coming off the front of the roller, okay? And the spade and the pawl, as we call it, that little silver locking part, always going to be on the right, okay? So I'm going to grab that here for you. Just show you that again. So you can see this pawl here, got the awning fabric coming off the front of the roller, the front's facing me, and the pawl is on the right. When you install this, that silver pawl needs to be at the bottom. If it's not at the bottom, the awning will lock off in random positions and you'll have minimal control. You need to lock that off at the bottom. So I'm going to hold it in that position. Going to pop one end in. I can see what I'm doing in the dark. Go. Pop that in. When you drop that into the head box, there's two little gates up there as well, which will stop the awning from coming out. It's all downward pressure anyway. It's very unlikely that it could come out. I've popped it in there. The spring is tensioned from the factory. I probably don't need to do anything more with the tension, but before I do anything, let's just see. Oh yeah, got some spring tension. Pawl's at the bottom. I let go, the spring tension, pull the blind, pulls the blind up. If I want to add more tension, I could pull this awning down by hand, say roughly 600. Find that pawl, lock it off, let go, and with that awning dropped down, say 600 millimetres, I'd lift it out of the head box, I'd roll it up, say half that distance, I'd put it back into the brackets, again making sure the pawl's at the bottom, and I would have added some tension to the spring in that roller tube. And if you want to do, I guess if you want to remove any tension, do exactly the opposite. You'd unroll more fabric and then pop it back in. Talked about the tension. Pulling down obviously does that. Decreasing does the opposite. So the next thing we do, guys, is we now just fit the arms to the bottom rail. When you have a small awning, you don't get much flex or give in the bottom rail. A wider awning is actually easier to clip the bottom rails on than a narrower awning. So I'm going to bring in my stud, my assistant here, and in situ with each other, we're going to clip on the bottom rail. 1, 2, 3. We're done. Yep. So if I was trying to do it on my own, I'd clip one on, I'd go to the other side, and twisting the bottom rail, I'd probably more than likely unclip the other one. So that's done. Now I can put that awning up. I can actually operate the awning now. You can see it goes up. I just fold that valance up. You can see that arm sitting in a good position where I've got the fabric and the bottom rail right at the base of the head box. So my positioning for these guide rods is spot on. But you can't just leave it like that. There are some securing points to screw this C-clip onto the base rail, which must be installed. So we've checked it, it's operating. Before we put those final screws in though, I'm just going to stand back and look at the awning and just make sure that those arms are nice and straight. I want it to look straight when the awning's up. I just tap them to where I want to be. Then I come along, and again, the self-drilling screws that you use here are supplied with the awning. So very small, gold, self-drilling screws. Come along. We've had that screw go in there about 6 times already, so it did hold that time. I've put a screw in there, and then I'm going to put another screw in behind. So 2 screws per arm fixing. That'll keep it secure. And there we have a System 2000 automatic lock arm awning with 300mm arms installed. Now, the other thing we can do now is, as I said, this is an awning that is designed for ground floor, but if it's a little bit higher than that, say half a floor above that, and it's a little bit too high to reach to operate the awning by hand, you do get a pull-down stick standard with each order. A pull-down stick is just a pull-down stick, so you can at least grab the awning and pull it down. You'll get a little boat hook, which you would come along and you would screw that onto the bottom rail, and then to operate it, you'd put your boat hook in and you'd be able to pull that awning down. If you've got awnings that you don't need that for, if it is low and they're easily accessible, don't put that on and you don't need to use the pull-down stick. Next thing really essentially is just, I guess, show the customer how to operate the awning. Peel off the plastic that comes on the head box. Okay, we'll have a little bit peeled back because we would have put our brand on it. Show them how to operate the awning and demonstrate to the customer, and obviously for an installer, clean up and tidy up any mess that you've left behind. So I mentioned the arm sizes, 150, 300. They're the most common arms that we do. But you can do 450 and 600 and 900, a lot less common. A Valance. These awnings come standard with a Valance. So here we have this fabric Valance. This is a plain fabric, a plain acrylic fabric. So we've gone with a straight, just self-hemmed Valance, which is quite common. You can still get your scalloped Valances. Really tend to only do those if you've got a striped pattern in your canvas or your acrylic. And you can specify the size of the Valance you want, either 150 or 200. You can actually ask for it without the Valance, but I think it's an awning that looks better with a Valance. And the Valance gives you that little bit of extra coverage. So that awning is designed to stop there, but I've got that little bit of extra fabric to protect from the sun and everything. This is also an awning where we've chosen to extend the bottom rail. We didn't need to, but we wanted to have it so we could show you. So you can see here, the awning is actually wider than the fabric. So we've extended the width of the bottom rail. Still fits neatly within the head box, and we've done that just so you can see what it looks like and what you can do if you need to fix your arms right to the outside edge, because that's where your mounting point is, where you're fixing to. Bracket options. This is the head box. The brackets that hold this roller tube and awning are built into the glass reinforced end caps here. So the bracket's already there. Most System 2000s are sold with the head box. They look better. It's a much nicer look. But sometimes if you don't have the ability to fit the head box because there just isn't any room or the customer doesn't want the head box, you can just ask for what's known as the universal bracket with no head box. Not the prettiest bracket, but obviously in some applications it's more than adequate. So you can call that up. Spoke about the brick fix bracket, that bracket to spread out the load over another course of bricks if you're concerned about the stability of the brick wall. We then have some standout brackets. I think Trev's just going to bring that in. If you've got an uneven mounting area that you're mounting to, and sometimes you'll have one mounting point that's set back as opposed to the other side of the awning. So you can get adjustable standout brackets where you can adjust your mounting point. You'd put a screw through that when you've determined how much of a standout you want, hold it in place. Obviously this is one that's designed to bolt onto the back of the head box. There's smaller ones that are designed to use if we're using the bottom L bracket and also for the top part of the guide rod. That's gold. We make that bracket. We use that a fair bit with our awnings. But there's another couple of brackets which only come in silver because we don't make them. They are actually brackets that we buy in. And these are brackets which are designed for corners and also for 135 degree bay windows. So you can see there, that's got a corner bracket there. So you just look there, you can see where that bracket would work, obviously giving us projection two ways, this way and that way, again screwing through that to hold it in position when we determine where it needs to be. Bay bracket, similar bracket, but obviously the degree is just a little bit different because it suits that, as I said, 135 degree bay window assembly. Sometimes you need more than that. So you have the ability to call up some post. So we have a 38 by 38 millimetre post with top fittings, or you can custom make a bottom fitting if need be to give us that fixing point to mount to. Certainly I know around the country, homes built in the 70s, there were some of those styles of homes where part of what we were fitting to stood out at a different point than the whole area we wanted to fit the awning to.
On this particular example I've got here, I've set it up, for instance, where I'm going to screw through that and up into the eave of the roof. But at the bottom, I've imagined I've got an angled brick sill. So what I've done here is I've cut down the four sides of the post a little bit.
Yep.
Cut off two of them and then bent the other two to the angle of the brick. And what I would then do is drill a hole through that and put the screw through that and that into the brick at the bottom, that at the top, and that secures the post onto an angled sill.
Yep. So some great, all of those extra fittings and extra brackets are available. They're on the ticker box form that you use when you order these awnings. If you mark what you need, then we'll supply them to you. Now, I spoke earlier about being able to fit this awning in a reveal scenario. Obviously, all the bracketry and all the componentry has got a face fit arrangement. So if we're going to fit in reveal, we'd need to get some angle to give us that face to fix to. So we stock, as standard here at Hunter Douglas at Rydalmere, 50 by 50 by 3 millimetre thick aluminium. And obviously you'd need a piece of 130 mil long to give us a backing for a head box, about 120 for the top of the guide rod, and about 100 for the bottom. So again, you can call those up, ask for those on the order form, and we'll supply those to you. Guys, that's it. It's an extremely popular awning. Our System 2000 automatic lock arm. It's a nice upsell from our standard automatic because the head box is a much, much more appealing head box. Gives us the flexibility of mounting with our mounting points that are behind the head box. And when the awning is down, everything is hidden. You don't see the arms, you don't see the guide rods. You just see a head box and you see a fabric, nice fabric awning coming down out of that head box. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in a future session. Cheers.